Okay, Dr. Winch. So in this episode, we're obviously going to be talking about, how to conquer fear and your journey. But obviously, to really, really understand this, we have to dive into your story and get a pretty good understanding of that because that's what makes this episode really, really interesting. Okay. So 23 years ago, you were diagnosed with terminal cancer, right?
Yes.
So, what was your paradigm of life prior to that type of diagnosis? And how has that paradigm changed over time as you've gone through your journey with this diagnosis?
Well, I don't have any religious beliefs. And I always believed that this is our one shot in life. And you would do well to leave the room tidier than it was before you came in, so to speak. So it's important to live your life while doing good as much as you can. And that was my belief beforehand, but
Mm.
it changed somewhat after I was diagnosed because I added to that something else. And I know this might seem weird, but because this is our only shot, and this is true as far as everybody is concerned, you might believe that there's an afterlife, but you know for sure that you have this shot. And
Mm.
maybe you'll turn out correct or not. But this is for sure the shot you have. And so many people don't appreciate it enough. And this is going to sound weird, but the wonderful thing about having a daily reminder of how precious life is, and I had daily reminder because I had visible cancer. You could see lumps.
Yeah.
So when you have that to remind you to make the most of each day, not just as a saying or something nice to believe in, but actually to make the most of each day, I think it enabled me to really have a wonderful 23 years and really waste very little of those days. But it also made me much more determined to leave the room tidier. I
Mm.
figured it was part of the way or the strategy that I'm going to use in order to live with this cancer and not die with it. Because I was initially given a few months, a year or two, maybe,
Really?
and I was 40 at the time,
Wow.
and the diagnosis was correct, and the prognosis, what's going to happen, was also correct. And
Mm.
everybody that I saw in the waiting rooms of the first few years, within a very little amount of time, they weren't there anymore. And then there were new faces, and then they weren't there anymore. But I was. And again, not because of any kind of religious belief, and I don't really know the right reason, but I think that really focusing on doing good, A, and enjoying life and living it, not because it's going to end very soon. I didn't think it was going to end very soon, but because of the daily wake up call I had available to me every time I looked in the mirror.
Interesting. Got it. Okay, yeah. So it seems like this diagnosis brought you to the present moment again on a daily basis, right? Because again, most people are kind of stuck in their head and they're not really, really embracing the present moment, and that tends to take them away from being grateful for having what they have right now and like staying fully connected to life as it is, right? Now, this is pretty
Yes,
interesting. So you mentioned something like doing good and making sure that you're having fun in life and just enjoy yourself while you're here, right? So, as far as doing good, you made a pretty interesting shift in your life when it came down to what you did in terms of your career, right? You said that your experience with terminal cancer prompted you to make a shift in your career, right? You went from being like an organizational psychologist and you put your efforts towards proving that people with a disability can succeed in the workforce. So that's a pretty interesting shift. And like, what are the different types of experiences that you went through in your journey that kind of made you come to that conclusion? Like, what happened with your experience to cause that shift?
Yeah. Um, for the first few weeks after I was diagnosed, I think like every person who's diagnosed with cancer, especially if it's supposed to be a nasty one,
Mm-hmm.
you're in shock. You don't know exactly what to expect. You don't know what the future has in store for you. Are you going to go through treatments? When? What kind? How you'll react? And there's also something that all cancer newly diagnosed people have to go through, which is maybe the worst and the most horrific thing is that you have to make a list of everyone you care about, and everyone who cares
Mm-hmm.
about you, and then you have to call them up and
Oh
tell them,
wow.
and you don't even know what to tell them because you don't even know what's going to happen. You're in the beginning of it, and you have to do that when you're so upset and in such a deep state of shock. So I think everybody who's discovered they have a serious illness, terminal or not, go through this initial phase, which is very difficult. And for some, it can take weeks, I guess, and for some, it can take months or years, and some won't break out of it, I believe. But I was in that stage for a few weeks. And I think one of the most difficult things to when you're sitting in front of a doctor who's telling you that you're not going to live for long, and that was the
Mm-hmm.
terminology. A lot of doctors, they don't know how to really break bad news well.
Yeah, saying it
Um,
blunt.
yeah, and I think hope is such an important thing. So I wouldn't, I
Mm.
would like rephrase if I were them. But but when you hear that news, um, you sort of lose control over your life. Now the doctors have it, and they will tell you if you will live or not live. And I don't know how to go about my day to day when someone else is controlling my life. And after a few weeks, I decided that I want to take control back. And I
Mm.
decided that in an era where even 23 years ago, it's even more so nowadays, when medical breakthroughs are coming at a breathtaking pace, one we have never experienced uh, uh, in human history. I
Mm.
don't have to beat cancer. I just have to live with it long enough for
Mm-hmm.
something to come along.
Mm.
And I thought, all right, what can I do to make to give myself the biggest chance to live long enough for something to come along? And I decided there are three things I can and I should be doing. One, and I guess we'll talk about that a bit later on, is how to conquer fear, because
Yeah.
it's very difficult. It's very difficult to not have very fearful thoughts intrude upon your conscious every few minutes. But the second one was that I want to be as strong as I can when I do have to go through various treatments. I want to strengthen my body. And I decided that the best way for me to do that was to start running. Now, you
Mm.
don't have to be, the good thing about running is you really don't have to be good at it. You just have to be persistent. So I decided that I'll make three changes in my life. I'll take back control over my emotions and be able to live happily, a very important part of it. The second part was the physical part, and I'll get myself into the best shape possible for me, regardless of my condition. And I started running. At the beginning, it was like half a mile, and I threw up.
Oh yeah.
But then, but then I ran a bit more and a bit more and a bit more, and I ultimately ran 4 marathons with loads of
Mm.
cancer inside me. I
Wow.
didn't run that fast. You just have to do it, and I got my conditioning and my endurance to such a state that I felt that I had maximized my capability to deal with whatever's going to come along. But the third thing, which was personally for me very important, was that I wanted to find something social that I could have a big impact on with a nice long term plan, not something I would finish in a couple of months and then, And because we're just a regular family, we're not rich in it by any means, it had to be something I could affect by doing and not by giving. I just don't have enough to give.
Uh-huh.
And I was sort of looking around and thinking, what could I do? And then I met a friend who told me he's paraplegic, and he told me that people with disabilities are the most unemployed group in the whole world. It doesn't matter what country you're looking at, they are the most unemployed group out there. And it depends who's measuring, but it's anywhere between 50 to 70 to, and 80% unemployment, and it's probably closer to the 70 and 80% mark in every country you think of.
Really?
And
Every country?
every country. And if you're talking to people from welfare who are in charge of hiring people with disabilities or finding jobs for them, they'll say, no, it's 50%. It's not. It's 70 or 80%. If you look at the group of people at work age with disabilities and see how many of them are actually working, then you'll get up to the really, really big numbers. And when he told me that, because I have a PhD in psychology, and I also have a degree in special education, at the beginning it sounds reasonable. Severely disabled people or disabled people not working, yeah, I can. Yeah. But when you think about it a bit, it's not reasonable. Because why are most people in a wheelchair out of a job? I mean, what do they lack? They're saving you a chair if you're an employer, right? There's no good reason. 80% of the people who are legally blind have enough sight left to function on a computer. Well, why are most of them out of a job? Why are about a third of the people with disabilities in the world have emotional disabilities? And by the way, something interesting about that is that there are huge countries and lots of countries that don't have that category. They don't have people with emotional disabilities. They have people who are hospitalized, and if you're not hospitalized, you're good. Mm-hmm. But you still, about a third of the people with disabilities in the world have emotional disabilities. Most of them are compliant with their medication. You would know you're speaking to someone with an emotional disability. Why are they, nearly all of them, out of a job? It just didn't make sense. And I started interviewing people, just asking to talk to them, severely disabled people who were in their homes and were chronically unemployed. And the first thing I noticed was that what they do to pass their time all the time is screens and telephones. And that was before they were turned into the same thing. Wow. But that's what most people do at work. They work with a screen and telephones. So why aren't they working? And the second thing I realized, which made me much more motivated to do something about it, was that as a society, as a global society, everybody will say, yeah, let's strengthen our weakest link. But no, we've taken our weakest link medically, and we've imposed upon it two horrendous hardships, additional ones. In every country in the world, disability pensions are much lower than minimum wage. So we've turned people with disability, that's about 15% of the globe, by the way, about 1 billion people, into the poorest amongst us. And the second thing we've done is we've secluded them in their homes, and we've created such a social trauma for these people who have nowhere to go, and nobody wants them, and they're left in their homes day after day. It doesn't matter what their actual disability is. The social trauma from being isolated like that is also really, really maybe even harder to bear than anything else. And the last thing you have to take into consideration is that about 80% of the people with disabilities in the world, that billion people, 80% of them are not born with a disability. They acquire it as they go along. Mm. So, I mean, we're all candidates. Mm-hmm. And I was given a very high disability grade because of a terminal illness, of a problematic expiration date, so to speak. But I didn't have any disabilities. But once I realized that it doesn't matter what the disability is, you're unemployed, basically, then I realized that it's fixable, because I don't know how to fix disabilities. But if the disability has nothing to do with the unemployment, then there's something to be done. And I came upon that realization maybe 2 or 3 months after I was diagnosed, and it got me very excited. And I realized, okay, this is what I want to concentrate and focus my life upon solving or fixing or doing as much as I can, because I figured Even if I can change things by even a little, it's 1 billion people. The amount of suffering I could help alleviate would
Mm,
be, huge. And that would fill me with so much happiness and so much
yeah.
sense of accomplishment and joy. Together with the other things I was doing, I figured that would give me the best chance to beat the cancer at some point and to stay alive long enough. I
Mm,
kept on saying to my wife, if we manage to get 1,000 people working, that's 1,000 people
yeah,
whose
1,000 people.
life
Yeah,
we've changed. That's a
yeah,
lot, and I
yeah.
don't think I don't think cancer's that strong. So, sort of, I had those three things: getting
Mm.
control back over my emotions, getting my body into the best shape possible, and doing the biggest social thing I could think of, which I could affect by doing. And that was my strategy to stick around until something came up.
Got it. Okay, yeah. So, yeah, obviously it gave you a really strong sense of purpose, right? Now, have you
Yes.
seen, like any change in the way that people with a disability are being treated? Because I know, at least in Canada, at least, there's a lot of social programs that tends to help people who might be struggling, right? I mean, again, I'm not sure what it was like uh 25 years ago, right? But have you seen any shift in the way that people are treated, or is it the same and just in your experience
There have been some positive shifts, but if I put them all together, they've been made by the
overall?
wrong people. And I'll try and
Hmm.
explain what I mean.
Okay.
The physical aspect of accessibility, it's much more ingrained nowadays. People build a building, they have to make it accessible in most countries by law nowadays to people in a wheelchair or to people with a walker. They have to have a ramp and wider door
Yeah.
frames, which is great. But those are 8% of the people with disabilities. And that's not going to really change the state of employment. If you look at world statistics, the amount of the percentage of people with disability that are currently employed has been going down for the past few years, and that's because that the answer doesn't lie with government. The answer lies with corporations, and I'll try and explain what I mean.
Mm.
You nowadays have very strong global corporations, right? And if you look at their social reports, and they all do social reporting, which is a wonderful thing, they'll all have something about hiring people with disabilities, but they're doing the wrong thing. I don't want Google, for instance, to go and find the most capable, brilliant people with disabilities out there and hire them because they'll find a job anyhow. But instead of building or contributing money so people can have a daycare center, we need the corporations to realize the following: that in every population, in every community, you have people who it's more difficult to help them make it in the job market for different reasons, because they have a disability, or they're ex-cons, or they had a police record, and trust is an issue, or they're a
Yeah.
bit older, or whatever. But they're more difficult to hire. It takes more of an effort to hire them. Who's going to employ them at the end of the day? It's not going to be the mom and pop shop. They don't have the means. But if every large corporation would take it upon itself to hire those in their community, the place they operate out of, which it's more difficult to actually employ because you have to put more effort in there. If you would do that, and I'll give you a couple of examples in a sec, then we wouldn't have so many people with disabilities and other people chronically unemployed. In America, nearly 10% of the adult population has a police record, and no one's hiring them. They're like
Really?
5 times as unemployed as other people.
Yeah.
Why? I mean, and you have these large corporations who have these conventions about the importance of hiring people with disabilities. Yes, but don't hire the cream of the crop. Hire those that really need your help. I'll just give you a couple of examples that I know about. And you have large corporations that I approach, and I give talks in various places around the world, and you have these multinational corporations, and they have branches here and in England and in the States and in Canada. They have branches everywhere. When I go and say, why aren't you making a point of having not 15% of your employees, which is the percentage of people with disabilities, 2% of your employees, but make sure every year 2% of your employees are people who have been chronically unemployed before, and you're helping them work. Because, for instance, some of them can only work part-time. And they'll say to me, yes, but we don't have any part-time job openings. And I'll say to them, well, why don't you create them? And they'll look at me with, yes, but we don't have them. And I'll say, who decided that you don't take a full-time job and just cut it in half and have 2 people do it at different hours? It needs a bit of flexibility. And everyone operates under the assumption that, well, we have this opening, can anybody fit inside? And I keep on saying, don't, make a box and expect people to fit inside. Look at what they can do and adjust yourself so they will fit you. Because otherwise, they'll stay out of a job. And it'll be the same in every community you want to look at. And that's why I said they're going about it the wrong way. They're trying to find people talented enough to make it in their own system. And I want them to change the system so that people who are not talented enough can make it and succeed and reach regular productivity. And most people can, but not working a full-time job. You have certain conditions where you take medication and you can't wake up in the morning. So they can turn up at 10 or 11. But if you don't allow them to turn up at 10 or 11, they'll never work. So allow them to turn up at 10 or 11. That's okay. But you don't have that kind of mindset within corporations. It's very sort of like cold and detached and rigid. But they're the biggest employers out there. And if they don't change their mindset and how they go about things, we won't really be seeing much of a change.
Okay, I'm just going to ask a few questions to follow up on that, right? So
Yeah.
you mentioned that these corporations should try and make adjustments to hire more people who have a disability, right? Now, this might sound kind of cold, but I'm just going to ask it, I guess, just to play devil's advocate, right? Yeah. So what if they say, oh, we don't want to compromise quality and trust, because obviously with people who are like ex-cons, I mean, that's, I guess, a problem in terms of trust, as you mentioned, right? So nobody wants to take a risk in that regard and compromise quality. Like you did mention that, they can still do the job as good as someone else, right? But like, I guess in some certain roles, like, it's not going to be as capable if you have a certain disability, right? So what if they tell you, hey, this might compromise quality, which is going to hurt our company and eventually bring us underwater, right? And then the follow-up on that was to create jobs. What if they tell you, oh, we don't have the capital to create the jobs to pay the employees? Because again, obviously to create a job, you have to have the capital and resources, right? So what if they say, oh, we just don't have that much to reinvest back in the company and create those jobs for those people?
Okay, let's start from the beginning.
First one, the first one. We'll
and if I forget the second one, you'll have to remind me. I want to.
No problem. I'll do it.
I want to talk about the first one.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that if you have values, i.e., if you're a corporation operating out of a certain community, and you're making money out of that community, then we'll take the ex-cons example, right? Yeah. People who have paid for their deeds. They have paid. Now they are out of prison because they have already paid for their deeds. Why aren't you giving them a chance? Just because they have a record? So many people have a record just for like minor infringements. Why aren't you giving people a chance? You don't have to have them guard your safe when you set out, but there are other jobs they can do which wouldn't endanger you. They just need a chance. So you can't live in a society and make money off it and buy into its legal system if you're not willing, People go to jail and to pay the price for their deeds. And once they have, give them a chance. I employ people who have done the most horrendous things, and we've never had a problem with any of them. They're dying to be trusted, and they're wonderful employees. And the second thing is, I want to introduce a concept which we call reserved employment for the opportunity deprived. And it's a simple concept. It just sounds like a long word, but it's a simple concept. Everybody gets it when it comes to parking, right? I mean, any big corporation you go to, there'll be specific parking spaces up close for people who have mobility issues because they don't have the option to park far away and still make it into the venue. Are we good with that? Everybody accepts that, right? People with certain disabilities, and I'm for everybody entering the job market and then making their own way once they're in it. So, for instance, people who are hard of hearing or deaf, if you're going to give them a regular job, they're not going to be able to make it there because they're going to have communication problems, right?
Exactly.
But so many large corporations have chat teams, right? Giving chat service, that's a good entry-level job.
That's a good example. Yeah.
If you would reserve just a few of those spots for the hard of hearing in your community, maybe we wouldn't have a situation where so many of them are out of a job. And that's just one example. And I can give you many, but there are specific disabilities that need specific jobs in order to make it. I'll give you another example. People with cognitive problems, who with Down syndrome, for instance, they're most of them out of a job, and they live in a hostel or a community home. And you know what they do after they wake up? They eat breakfast and they clean their plates, and then they clean the table. If you're a restaurant, instead of having a buff student working at cleaning the tables and doing the dishes, hire someone who needs that job and has lesser options. It's not that difficult. Every corporation has specific jobs, entry-level jobs. You don't have to create them. They're there. They're just taken up by regular people instead of those who need them. I met so many people with disabilities who've had so many opportunities, but they were the wrong ones. They were irrelevant to them. They could never make it there. So I can give you example after example, but if we don't change our mindset, and it won't change. Now, the funny thing is that anybody, and I haven't studied economics, but ask anybody, the more people out of a certain society that work and are productive, the richer the society. This is worthwhile for everybody. There's no downside to it. But it's not only corporations who don't do that. Governments don't do it either. You don't have large governmental bodies looking at all the jobs they have to offer and saying, no, these are jobs that can suit people who have lesser options in this regard. So let's save a few of them, not all the parking spots, just a few of the parking spots, just a few of the jobs. So people could enter the job market. And wonderful things happen after they do. And it could take them a few months to get up to speed. You don't have to lose money, because once they do get up to speed, and they will get up to speed, then they won't leave you so quickly. They'll be your loyalist backbone, your lowest group of employees. So even if someone's, someone who can only work 80 hours a month, and you put them next to someone who's doing 160 hours a month, so in 2 months, and after 2 months, the guy who's working full time will be so much better than the other guy. They've both been here for 2 months, but he's had half of the hours. Give him enough time to come up to speed. When I was running a marathon, you can't just start running a marathon. You have to get your body used to it. If you haven't worked for so many years, you don't snap into the position. You need to get used to it. So, but if we gave people that chance, if we enabled them to do that, then we wouldn't have all these daycare centers all around, because people would be part of our society, and it would be them and their families who are also, you always have the families around them that have to lose work days and are worried what will happen after we're gone. And you would alleviate those billion people are surrounded by other people, it would just change the world in such a wonderful way. But we
Hmm.
need to be a bit less rigid in our thinking about how to approach it.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, that's definitely really interesting, right? And then that ties into the second question that I asked, which pretty much comes down to uh creating those jobs that, people with a disability can compete in, right? Like one really good example that you mentioned is chat jobs, for like customer service, right? Like
Yeah,
that's really good because obviously, if you're deaf, you're not going to be able to talk on the phone. It's not going to work, right? So chat jobs are obviously a really new type of job that we've kind of like introduced into the job market over the past, I guess, like 10 years. So that's a really good example. But yeah, what if they were to say, oh, we just don't have the capital or the resources to create these kind of jobs that people with a disability can compete for?
but you're not creating them. They're there. You're just.
Mhm.
I'll give you an example. The job is there.
Mhm.
You're hiring other people to do it. Save a few spots for people who need that job and be a bit more flexible with their working hours. It won't cost you anything. If you're a company of 20 people and you can't afford it, I get it. But if you're a company and you're employing 10,000 people, 20,000 people, you're making
I see what you're saying.
billions of dollars. I don't get it. I don't get it.
I see what you're
And
saying.
I'll tell you something else, Shaq. I mean,
Hmm.
you have those companies and they spend an awful lot of money by giving, right? Someone writes a check from high up and they build this wonderful hospital wing. Most of the employees have nothing to do with that kind of giving. And that doesn't really enhance the giver. It's great for the hospital wing. But for the person who wrote the check, yeah, a couple of pictures in the paper, and that's it. You really, really get the giving rush by doing, by sweating.
Hmm.
And if you sweat and put an effort into helping someone, not by giving money, but by helping them acquire the knowledge and confidence they need in order to make this job happen, then the feelings you have doing that are so fulfilling. They make you so happy, and you feel so thankful that you had the opportunity to do that. I mean, giving is the most wonderful thing. People who it's really it's like a narcotic. It just makes you very very happy. But not writing a check that
Yeah.
doesn't do anything, sweating, putting effort into. You don't have to sweat, but you have to put effort into helping people
Yeah.
physically with your time and your patience. And that's what gives dividends. That's what turns angry and upset people with work burnout into happier people. It really does something great, but writing a check doesn't. So you have these funds that you're not using correctly. Help make all your employees be part of that giving. Right? In
Hmm.
Europe, you have so many refugee camps and they're in bad straits, and you have people who need help in Canada and the US, everywhere. If the large corporations would say to their employees, you know what, like a day every 2 months or a day every quarter, we'll pay you, but don't come to the office. There's organized help. We're going to go and help. We're going to build something for those people. We're going to help them out. We're going to do this or that. That would make people stay in their jobs longer. That would make people feel purpose. That would make people feel thankful. Even though they work for a bank and there's nothing social about it, the bank is acting in a social way. Everybody would benefit from it. But that doesn't happen.
Hmm.
It's the check writing. And then everybody feels, no, we've done our part. No, you haven't. You just written a check.
Yeah. Mm. Got it. Okay, yeah. So like, yeah, that makes a lot more sense, right? Because obviously, if you have like a multi-billion-dollar company, that's completely different, right? Because obviously, you have all kinds of jobs opening, and then you can find the roles that people with a disability, can excel in, and then help them get hired in those spots, right? Because
Right.
I
And
mean, you will
succeed.
have the reason, the billions on top of billions, right? Because like quality is like the most important thing for people who are trying to start a company. Because if you're a small to mid-sized company, like everyone wants the absolute most skilled person to make sure that their company doesn't,
Right.
flop,
But
right?
they don't have
So
to
yeah,
earn
but that,
billions.
Yeah.
Hundreds of millions is enough. You're making the hundreds of millions. Help
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. I see what you're saying. Yeah. Obviously, the bigger you are, it becomes easier at that point, right? Because now you can, again, give people more. As you said, that's one of the best feelings ever. And to change this problem in society, right? So people who are with a disability can actually work and
To quote Spider-Man's
contribute
uncle,
with great power
the
comes
more
great
power
responsibility.
you have, the more
Yeah.
responsibility goes with it, right?
Yeah.
The more you're making, the more you should be doing in this regard.
Got it. Yeah, yeah, that's a really interesting topic. I might have a podcast on that, some other day as well. Because I mean, we can dive into this and talk about this in detail, right? So that's really interesting in terms of finding work for people who have a disability and just how to approach that specific concept, right? So that's really 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 interesting. But yeah, earlier you mentioned something along the lines of obviously one of the main pillars that you had to really zone in on was overcoming fear, right?
Yeah.
Overcoming fear, yeah. So you mentioned five main strategies that you used to kind of help you conquer fear, which was getting in your way. Like in terms of your ability to overcome this obstacle and live as a normal person, right? So we're gonna go into each one of those strategies, and you can explain how you channeled each one of those tactics into your life and how it helped you, really overcome fear. Cool.
Yep.
Absolutely. Okay. Okay, so the first thing that you mentioned was you have to like develop a zero tolerance for fear, which you kind of covered earlier on. But can you go a bit deeper on that and explain how exactly you were able to do this or how people can do this?
Okay. I think I think the most common misunderstanding when it comes to controlling your emotions and your mind is that it's difficult. And people think, yeah, I tried it once or twice or three times, but it just didn't work for me. And that's like saying, yeah, I went to lift weights three times, and I didn't look like Arnold Schwarzenegger on his good days. And no, that takes a bit more effort than that. And it does take
Yeah.
persistence and effort. And the gains are incremental and slow. But this was my thinking. You know that sometimes when you have an older couple and one of them passes away, the other one will often pass away very quickly. Not because they were necessarily sick, just emotionally they gave up, and then things happen. And I really believe that the happier you really are emotionally, the healthier you are. The
Yeah.
less isolated you feel, the healthier you are. The less fear you have to live with, the healthier you are. So I was very, very invested in being as happy as I could. And when I had thoughts of what would happen with my daughters if my two young daughters back then if I pass away, or I'll never get to see this, or I'll never get to see that, and it's very difficult to be happy when those thoughts are intruding every conscious moment, at least at the beginning. So the first thing I decided was every time I those thoughts intrude and I can't stop them from intruding, I will do something about it. And what I did was, it's very simple. We actually cannot think about two things simultaneously. We can quickly switch between them, but we can't
Yeah.
think about two things simultaneously. So I can't stop bad thoughts from entering my mind, but I can try and replace them as quickly as possible with other thoughts. And I would literally decide every morning two things I would focus on. I'll explain them both in a second. The first one was what happy thoughts I was going to try and focus on the minute bad thoughts entered my consciousness, wherever that would happen. So, for instance, the best times I have in my life is with my wife and my two daughters. And we love going abroad on trips. So I would decide in the morning, where abroad are we going to be going? And I would actually try and play out in my mind every step, literally every step of the journey, getting into a
Wow.
cab, driving to the airport, what we would talk about, and focus as hard as I could on that. And at the beginning, it's very difficult to focus on it when other thoughts are coming in, but I would stay with it as much as I could. And after a while, you keep on the narrative, if it's a good enough one, and I get to choose, so I chose good ones for me. So if the narrative is good enough, then you're focused on that narrative and you get rid of the bad thoughts. And even if they come back in 2 minutes, I'm back to the narrative. So I would think about positive narratives I could replace and focus on to replace the bad thoughts. And the second thing is that simple like arithmetic, you have to concentrate on just a bit. Start from 1,000, take off 9, and say it out loud. 991, 982, and do that. Now it's difficult. You need to focus to do that. So you don't, it's difficult to think about bad things if you're actually focusing on the next number and saying it out loud. That's what worked for me. I was coming up with every strategy I could think of,
That's
not to stop bad thoughts, but to replace them as quickly as possible. And I could be in the middle of talking to someone or eating, but I would stop and do that. And it took me a few months, but after a few days even, I was getting better at focusing on my thoughts. And after a few weeks, I was getting the time it took me to focus on them and get rid of bad thoughts just shortened. And after a few months, I would have bad thoughts, but they wouldn't linger for more than a second before I just got rid of them. And I maintain that today because I'm still
wow.
supposed
That
to have incurable cancer, so I can have bad thoughts every now and then, but I will never entertain them. And it doesn't matter if they have anything to do with cancer or anything else. I do not entertain bad thoughts. If there are things I need to problem solve about, problems, then I don't put them out of my mind. But when it's just worrying, things you could do nothing about, I will not entertain them. I will not let ruin a beautiful day or a wonderful hour with that. So that was the zero tolerance aspect. And I'm telling you, it's the most difficult thing I ever did. It's much more difficult than working out because you need to really, really collect yourself and focus and be determined, even though it seems that it's not working, but eventually it will. And controlling my mind was a big thing for me.
got it. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And something that you mentioned, which is really important, is that pretty much multitasking is a myth, right? Like many people don't really understand that, right? Like you can't focus on two different things at the same time. Like it's just not possible. Like if you look at the science, it's just not possible, right? Like you have to stay focused on one, and if you do switch, you're going to switch back and forth, but now you're
Right.
going to compromise the quality of both the things that you're doing. Right. So you
Right.
mentioned that, okay, like you would switch the thoughts over to something, happy. And obviously you would kind of choose your happiest thoughts by going into your own life and looking, okay, what makes me the happiest? And then you would just kind of paint a really like a really vivid picture of that thought and a
Right.
journey as well. Right. So to completely
Yes.
take your mind away from that. And then also you mentioned like math, like going down from 1,000 to 991. Again, the main concept comes down to taking your mind away from those
Exactly.
dangerous
Whatever
negative
works.
thoughts.
But as long as you can keep
Yeah,
dragging
and
your
then you
mind
can't
back to
quit.
where you want it.
Exactly. And then obviously as well, you can't quit, right? Because so many people try it once or twice, and then if it's not as helpful as they want it to be, they just kind of stop it, right? So being persistent with it is also extremely important. Now, what if someone were to say, "Oh, hey, this is just like blind optimism. Like you're not being realistic. You're just, trying to escape and you're not in touch with reality." Like what would you tell to those people? Because I mean, obviously like people sometimes they have hard time with that, right? Like especially as you're getting older, it tends to be a little bit harder to kind of not be in touch with like the reality of the situation.
I'm all for being in touch in a reality you can affect,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
But if you can't affect the reality you're in, then focus on the good parts of it, even though they might be very small, but focus on those because otherwise you are just basically saying to yourself, I choose to be miserable because my reality is miserable. My reality is never miserable. It could be mostly miserable, it could be largely miserable, but there'll always be a sliver of positive. You have a good friend. There's something you enjoy to watch on TV. There's a certain flavor of ice cream you're really into. But there's gonna be a sliver of positive. And if you can't change the negative, entertaining it, focusing on it, speaking of it, even to yourself or
Mm.
elsewhere, is just making you miserable. And this is your shot.
Yeah.
Take back control and make yourself as happy as possible, not unrealistically. I didn't tell myself, I'm going to live to 200. I'm not. But I'm going to live
Yeah.
today and I'm probably going to live tomorrow. And let's see what I want to do with that time. And let's see what I can do
Mm.
to enjoy it the most or make the most out of it or bring the most
Mm.
happiness I can to people I care about or to people
Mm.
I want to help because I have today and tomorrow. I don't have to think about what if I don't have the day after because I have today and tomorrow. There's always an upside. Focus on it.
Mm.
It'll make your life so much happier, even though there's so much dark you can always look at. But that's a
Mm.
choice, and I choose not to.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. 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 Exactly. So it comes down to again focusing on what you can control, right? Because as you mentioned, like the happier you are, the more healthier you tend to be, right? So if you can generate that internal happiness and positivity, you're very likely going to help your situation. Obviously, in your case with the cancer, or just life in general. Like it's just you give yourself more positive emotions, the stronger you will feel on the inside to overcome any sort of obstacle, right? Which pretty much also covers number two, which is like you talk about just control what you can, and you mentioned that the mind is the only battlefield where we can achieve full control, right? So I guess you kind of covered that too, because I guess focusing on what you can control is pretty much all you can really do, and then the rest you kind of have to go with the flow. Obviously in your case, do the treatment and all that stuff, but again it just comes down to focusing on what are the controllables, and that's all you can really do in that case.
Right.
Got it. Okay, now something else that you really mentioned, which is also really important, is that many small wins will eventually add up to big wins, right? So in our society, this is a concept that's been forgotten, right? Because it's all about like instant gratification. Everyone wants everything now, right? Like you want that big win now. So what have you found to be so powerful about small wins, and why does it help you really overcome big obstacles? And what would you consider a small win?
So I won't talk about myself for this. I'll just give you an example from some of my employees,
Okay, cool.
right? So you have people who've never worked before coming to work for us, and they have zero confidence because they have no reason to be confident. Nobody wanted them before. Everybody's told them that
Mm,
there's not really much they can do, that they're not accepted. So it doesn't matter who they are and how talented they really are, they turn up with zero confidence. And when you have zero confidence, you sort of expect yourself to fail. And that's what happened up to now. So you're even, in order to not get disappointed again, you're even sort of setting yourself up for failure. And when we have people in a course that will take 2 weeks for them to finish, after a day or two, they say, I'm never going to learn this. I'm never going to get this. It's way too hard. And we say to them, imagine you're climbing a mountain and it's a steep mountain. If you keep looking to see how much of the mountain you have left, you'll never make it to the top. But let's pause just a minute, and we do this every day. Pause where you are now. Now look back down and tell me how much you've already traversed. Before you came here, you knew nothing about what we're now teaching you. Now, tell me what you do know, not what you have left to learn, what you have already learned. And you can't say it's nothing because you know it is. It's not nothing. What is it? It might not be enough, but it's there. You've proven one thing to yourself and to us. You can learn. It might take a bit longer. We have patience. You should have patience because your engine has been idle for so long. It might take a while for it to warm up. Give it that time to warm up. And every day look back and tell me what you've learned, how far
mm,
you've come. And even if it's a step, you look back and you say to yourself, I haven't climbed a mountain ever or for years. And look, I'm taking steps. It
mm,
might take a while, but I'm moving forward. I'm taking steps. And as an outlook in life, it's such an important outlook because otherwise things could be often seem so difficult and so insurmountable. But if you can take steps, small ones, every day and appreciate them, and say to yourself, tomorrow I'll take another step. And it doesn't matter how many steps I have left, as long as I'm moving forward with whatever the task is, you're getting there. And that's the wonderful thing about little gains. Celebrate them, enjoy them. I took small steps, but today I even took a medium-sized step. That's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
And helping people celebrate those little victories. They're not reaching, you're not there yet, but you're celebrating a little victory. And it can empower you and make you feel happy and different and capable. But you have to celebrate them. And people who don't have confidence have a hard time doing that. So we try and help them. We point it out for them with a flashlight on those steps.
Got it. Yeah. Okay. So it pretty much comes down to showing yourself the progress that you've made and looking at the skills that you've acquired over time, right? Because when you really look at that, that tends to build momentum and confidence, which again then gives you that inner belief that, hey, you know, if I did that, I can do this, and then I can do that, and then I can, and then you can just keep moving forward and forward and forward, right? And yeah, this is really interesting because if you look at the Navy SEALs, right? They have goal setting as one of their main like mental building blocks when it comes down to mental toughness. Like they have four different blocks, but goal setting is one of the main ones, right? And they kind of break down these big missions and big, like training sessions into the smallest, most manageable tasks that they have to do next. And they just kind of focus on doing one at a time. And then after you get each win, like one after the other, that just builds more pride and more confidence. And that allows them to go and conquer that big mission or big training session that at first seemed like, something that was completely impossible, right? So again, they use it themselves. So, I mean, this is a really important concept that people need to understand because it helps them overcome huge challenges.
Exactly. It's the same like running a marathon.
Yeah.
I ran half a mile and I threw up. How am I ever going to finish a marathon? But I don't need to finish a marathon after I ran half a mile. I just need to run a 3/4 mile tomorrow. That's all I need to do.
Absolutely.
And then the day after that, I want to try to get up to a mile. That's all I need to do. At some point, I'll get to where I want to go, but that's not my headlights aren't up high. They're just, what's the next thing I need to accomplish? And even if it takes me a bit longer to accomplish it, as long as I'm getting there, and focus on that. And that's the same thing as the Navy SEALs or anybody else who sets themselves a task or any kind of task they want to accomplish, be it emotional, mental, or physical, or occupational.
Yeah.
Just focus on getting to the next level. And if the level is too far away, make the step shorter, smaller.
Even smaller. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Okay, yeah, that's great. And then now the next thing that you speak about is fight for those who love you, right? So you mentioned you would like try and visualize the faces of your loved ones telling you that they're, like really proud of you, and you'll see their warm smiles and all these different things. Now, I'm going to spin this. It might be a little bit dark, but what if someone doesn't have any real loved ones? Because that's a problem for many people around the world, right? Like loneliness, is like a real thing. Many people don't actually have any loved ones that they want to make proud or have to make proud. But if they want to get the power of this philosophy, how can they, I guess, make any adjustments to kind of, get those same benefits? I know it's hard, but like, can they spin it to get those benefits?
Well, that's a very good point. Loneliness is a problem.
It's a huge
But
problem.
loneliness has a catch in it. And when people are truly lonely, they tell themselves that the people that they thought cared for them don't care for them that much. The people they thought they had a good relationship with, they don't really have such a good relationship with. So there's no point in calling them, and there's no point in maintaining. People who are lonely, looking out from a hole, see or convince themselves that they don't really have anyone who cares for them because no one's calling and no one's knocking at their door. This isn't true for everyone, but most people do have people that care for them, but they've dropped out of touch with them, and because they've bought into the thing that they don't really care enough. So there's no real point, and that's one of the catches in being lonely. If you don't make the effort to reach out and to build, then you will stay lonely. And they keep saying, well, if they cared, they would call. But that's presumptuous. You presume you know what's going on in their lives, and then you're getting disappointed from them instead of doing what you can do and reaching out. So you can feel very, very lonely. But if you really don't have anyone, then there is one person you do have, and I use that person as well. And that's me, and I'll explain. Um, I don't know if you've ever had something that you wanted to do that you would be very happy if you managed to accomplish: a diet, learn a language, even something smaller, build something, fix something, but you don't have the energy to do it, right? So now I'll ask a reverse question. Is there anything that you've accomplished back in your life that you're very happy you put the effort in back then? You're not sure you would be able to do that today, but you're so happy you put the effort in back then. Most people have something like that. So in a month's time, in a week's time, in 10 years' time, I'm still going to be me. And the future me would be so happy if I maintain my diet today, even though it's very difficult for me. Because if I manage to do that enough, then the future me won't have to be on diet. And it's still me. So I would think about myself in a short while, in another month, after I've run this amount or accomplished that, and think back and think to myself, wow, I'll be so happy to say, wow, I didn't know I could do that, or I didn't know I'd actually stick with it, or I'll be able to. So it's still going to be me. Let's make me, in a week's time, in a month's time, in a day's time, be proud of me. So let's put the effort in for me. Let's make this something that the future me for the rest of my life can be happy I did.
Yeah.
And you always have you. So if you're not doing it for anybody else, think of what would make you proud to wake up tomorrow and realize you did yesterday. Because that yesterday is today. And do that. And make yourself proud tomorrow. Even though you don't feel like you wanna or can, or you're not in the mood, but it's you. You're going to wake up yourself tomorrow. Make yourself happy. Give yourself a gift of accomplishing whatever you needed to.
Got it. Yeah. Have you seen the movie Green Book?
No, I'm sorry, I did not.
No, that's fine. Because like in that movie, there's a really interesting quote where one of the characters tells the other one, he's like, "The world is full of lonely people who are afraid to take the first step," or something like that, which pretty much ties in exactly to what you were talking about right now. So that just reminded me of that.
That's very true.
It's a factual statement. Yeah, exactly. Now, yeah, so being lonely, that's a much deeper problem. Obviously, like you have to look at that specifically and figure out what's going on there. Because again, even as human beings, we're not meant to be lonely. It's just not a thing, right? Like we're meant to be together. So that is a deeper problem. And as you mentioned, oftentimes people who are lonely, they're just kind of scared to go and reach out to someone else because they feel like, oh, that person doesn't really want their presence and stuff like that. But again, that is a deeper problem. And you mentioned that you can kind of make an adjustment and focus on your future self, right? And create a visual that makes you proud of what you've been able to build and accomplish, right? Now, again, for many people who are, I guess, if they've lived for a bit, like they find it really hard to make those visualizations because, again, oftentimes you're saying that they have no real, I mean, because like for many people, they don't really have any real wins in the past that they can build on, but you're saying that they do have wins in the past, right? But what if they don't have any real wins in the past? Like, what do they do then? Like, again, it's just starting off with small wins and stuff like that. Because many people, like at a certain age, they just kind of, go into a certain zone, and they never really get out of that, right? Because I know people like that who just struggle to create that future visual of them being proud because they just don't trust themselves, and they find it really hard to build that self-trust.
I will go back to the small. First of all, I think that everybody has things they've accomplished. Otherwise, they wouldn't be alive, I guess. Everybody has things they wanted to do at some point in their lives. It does. People think about things that are very big. I'm talking about very small things, right?
Yeah. Again, it goes back to small wins. Yeah.
I wanna indulge in something, but I'm not gonna let myself do it today. Good. So there was a day you didn't indulge, right? And when you woke up the next day and you knew you wanted to, be proud of that. Think of one thing you could do today that would make you happy tomorrow that you did it. One thing. It doesn't have to be a big thing. And it's like a daily perspective. That one thing. If you want to get into shape, so 5 minutes, 3 minutes of something that will help you get into shape. Sit-ups, push-ups, run around the block for
Yeah.
whatever.
There we
But
go.
do that one thing that you don't think you'll do, but when you wake up tomorrow, you'll be happy you did. And build on that. And then do it again the next
Yeah.
day until you build your own record. And it can be the smallest steps possible. Now, people psych themselves out. Yeah, so I ran for 3 minutes. It doesn't mean anything. Yes, it does. Because you didn't want to. And you did. Now make it 4. And then make it 5. But you did. Because it means a lot. You didn't feel like it. And you did. Give yourself the credit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. So if you're struggling to create that image in your head of you being proud of yourself in the future, again, it comes down to doing those really small things, right? Those small wins, maybe like 2 push-ups a day, 1 push-up a day. And then as you build from there, as you just start to build from there, now you'll slowly start to experience that you will have that desire to go and accomplish bigger things because you're stacking up
Right.
so many small wins over, let's say, a 6-month period, right? And as you do that, it becomes kind of hard to not believe in yourself if you've been doing it, on a consistent basis, just
It'll take
stacking up
even
those small
less.
wins. Yeah.
Jack, it'll take even less, and it could be like, I'm gonna call 3 people, or I'm gonna write to 3 people I haven't been in touch with, and just reach
Yeah.
out and say, "Hi, thinking of you, wondering how you're doing." That's it.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to expect them to get back to me today or tomorrow, but I'm going to do my part to fight off this loneliness. And regardless of what the reaction will be, because I know that if I actually get around to doing it, I'll be very happy I did that. It can be whatever you want, but something that will make you happier or move you forward or make
Yeah.
you feel more competent or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Okay, Dr. Winch, so we've covered those 5 strategies that you spoke about. Now, was there any other tool that you use to kind of help you overcome any possible fear or anxiety that you might run into? Because you mentioned that your kind of cancer has a knack for coming back, right? So obviously, if people know stuff like that, oh, like that could generate more anxiety. But is there any other tool that you've used outside of these 5 strategies?
No, I think those
No.
are mainly the things, but after I'll just finish the cancer story.
Okay.
For 12 years, my cancer, I had it all over, but it was static. It just didn't move forward. And after 12 years, it did. And I had to go through treatments. And people said, you've had it for so long and it's so widespread that don't expect the cancer to disappear after a year of harsh chemotherapy and biological treatments and other stuff.
Yeah.
We're hoping for it to be reduced a bit and for you to go into like partial remission. And I said, well, that's your hope as doctors, perhaps, but that's not what I'm aiming for. I want a full breakup, and I'm going to go into a year of chemotherapy, not cringing and expecting it to be the most horrific experience possible, but it's a year of my life, and I want to enjoy it, even though I might have nausea or a taste in my mouth or whatever. And I pretty much did. There were like more difficult moments, but I was making a point of planning my days to make the most out of them, to enjoy them the most, to have something to look forward to tomorrow, to not look at the calendar so a year of my life will disappear. I don't want a year of my life to disappear. I want to enjoy it. So I had a year of treatments, and my cancer was gone after a year of treatments, and everybody said, well,
Yeah.
it's going to come back shortly. That was over 10 years ago. And I'm still doing my 3 things. I'm still running, and I'm not doing marathons anymore because my knees can't, but I'm running every day, and I'm still managing my emotions correctly, and I'm still trying to change the world regarding people with disabilities
Disabilities.
and employment. And I think I have a wonderful, happy life, and I could have cringed 23 years ago and like given up, but I
Yeah.
didn't. I never will. And whatever comes my way, I'll deal with it the same way I've been dealing now. It's coming, might come my way tomorrow, but not today. So I want to have a nice day today, if you don't mind. It's sort of
Yeah.
my attitude, and I really have, I think, an extremely happy life. much happier than it was before. Cancer elevated it in this like paradoxical sort of reasoning.
Yeah. That's amazing, Dr. Winch. Thank you so much for sharing your story. It's obviously really inspiring, really insightful. All the information can definitely help a lot of people, who might be in a certain situation. They can take a few things from our episode and hopefully make a change in their life and move forward. As you mentioned, you're always trying to do. So yeah, if people want to go and look more into your work, where would you go and tell them to go?
Well, McGraw-Hill bought the
Mm-hmm.
rights for my sort of story and the call center story and my own story, and I wrote a book about it 3 years ago called 3 years ago called Winning with Underdogs, and
Mm-hmm.
the book is out there, and it tells a story of the business I put together and how I think the world should and could change regarding the employment of all the underrepresented representative groups in the workplace, and about my journey with cancer and everything. And so it's out there. You can read it if you wish. And I'm on LinkedIn, and I post every now and then. Really not that much, but I do post every now and then. And I have a blog on Psychology Today. I write to every now and then, and that's how you can get in
Yeah.
touch with me. But I need to point something out. My
Yeah.
name is Gil Winch. If you look me up, you will find that there is someone who looks really, really like me. In fact, identical, and he's called Guy Winch. And Guy is my identical twin. And
Wow.
he's a psychologist.
That's
And
so interesting.
he has TED Talks and books translated into so many languages. And people often tell me that they love my book about emotional first aid or how to fix a broken heart. And I really thank them, but that would be my wonderful brother, Guy. There are two of us out there. We do look very similar. We're identical twins, and we're both psychologists. And you can meet either one of us if you wish.
No problem. Yeah, thanks for clearing that up. Yeah, because I mean, like I did search you up. It's really interesting. He does look exactly like you.
We're identical
Yeah,
twins. It doesn't go away.
exactly. All right, Dr. Winch, I will put all of those links to your stuff down below, and people can go and check it out if need be, and get some help if they're looking for that. So yeah, thank you so much. I had a really fun time with this episode. We went over our time, but it's a great episode. So I really appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
No problem. No problem. Thank you so much.